All right, we got a quick take episode of the Real Estate Law podcast about luxury short-term rentals. Not just the stuff that we operate. I mean, we have some really nice properties, but this guy, Jason Griggs, out of Las Vegas, he really knows the luxury space. He's a former teacher, and he's a New Yorker just like me. Moved out to Vegas. I think he still does some lacrosse coaching out there, but he eventually found his way into real estate, short-term rentals, and then luxury short-term rentals. His properties are sick. They are linked in the show notes here. You should take a look at them. He's got some 9,000 square foot property that Dana White from UFC rented for some reality show he was filming about slap fighting. It sounds very painful. So we talked to Jason about what it's like to operate luxury properties, deal with the people that rent them. People are going to Vegas to party. So the properties are often messier. But what do you do? When you're in a neighborhood and you got 50 people at a property, how do you be a good neighbor? How do you operate successfully? He is really good at that. So give a listen to this if you want to operate any luxury short-term rentals yourself, and go check out Jason Griggs' stuff because you are going to be wowed at his properties.
When we saw this property, we knew it was going to be a huge project. It's a 9,000 square foot mansion. There's a big main house, and then there's actually a second house on property with a casita with 2 bedrooms there. So it's a total of 8 bedrooms. It's just an absolute monster. And it's got a full basketball court, volleyball court, pool. It just has literally everything. You do not need to leave this resort. We call it a resort. And we just went all in with it. We bought it for $1.4 million. We put around $280,000 into this thing. So we fully remodeled it with the intention of it being the biggest, baddest Airbnb in Vegas and Henderson. And what we saw when we were doing it was there was no competition. There was no house remotely this size. And so when we released it, it got a lot of pop. We got a lot of attention on it because there's no houses anywhere in the area within 30 minutes of us that can hold, 16 to 20 people. And we've done some events. We've had 50 to 100 people at our house, and it doesn't even put a dent. That's how big it is. So when people come, that's kind of the feedback we get is this house is so unique. It's so cool. You could have so much fun at it. And that's the real goal we were going for, was we want to make it the most fun house in Las Vegas.
Said one thing in there really were no comps for it in the area. How do you start setting rates for something like that when you don't have competition to follow?
It's a great question. I actually get asked that a lot. We kind of we took a shot in the dark, but I knew deep down, I was this house is so unique and cool and rare. And we just set a price of $2,500 a night. And we were look, we're not going to go lower than this number. It's unique, and people are going to have to pay for unique. And if you do the math, 15 people, 20 people, $2,500 a night, it's not that expensive per person. And so we tried it, and we were getting the numbers that we were aiming for. We were getting $50,000, $60,000 a month on this house. Somebody saw it, and we got approached to put the house, do a deal with the UFC. And the UFC said, we want to use the house for their reality TV shows. And so we did a deal with them shortly after we released it. So we've had it up for, I think, 4 or 5 months, and then they came in and rented it for 6, 7 months.
For Power Slap, right?
Dana White's Power Slap, and UFC's The Ultimate Fighter.
Dana White's, he's a Boston guy. He's from the neighborhood.
Yes, he is, yep.
He's from South Boston, so he's the Southie guy.
He is for sure. He's an awesome dude, and probably the most surreal experience getting to work with him and his team and Pilgrim Films. And so the second show is going to get released, I think, in 2 months, and it'll be on ESPN.
So 2 years ago, did you think you'd be, here in this position with a 9,000 square foot place that's on reality TV?
No, but I work really hard. And with investing, I'm really good at it now with the rental side of things. And now I'm just taking my strategies and my systems and kind of pushing them kind of outside of Henderson. Because Henderson, we operate in probably the strictest jurisdiction in the entire country, but we get rewarded for it. We get numbers. Our numbers are top of the line compared to other markets, even the bigger markets, the Florida, the Texas, and the California markets. So our rules are really strict. But to answer your question, no, I didn't think I would be buying mansions, but now that's kind of like my MO, where Jason has the coolest houses that you can rent.
Yeah. So in terms of restrictions, this is a good kind of pivot into this conversation because people don't always think about restrictions when they want to operate a short-term rental. If you're just getting into this space, you might not even know where to start looking. I'm curious what some of Henderson's restrictions are as to what makes it such a restricted place, and what kind of advice you have you give people that are in your coaching programs or that you just talk to every day that want to get into the short-term rental space about regulations.
So I think regulations are a great thing, and everyone comes at my throat when I say that, but it's a really good thing because you don't want to go invest your money in a saturated market. And so Henderson, just city of Henderson, not Las Vegas, it's very regulated. So there's only about 320 licenses at a time. And so when you need a license per property, and then when you get a license on your property, there's a 1,000 square foot radius around your house that no other property could come in your zone and get a license. So you're pretty protected, and you know what's going on in the market, and you could kind of base your projections of, hey, I have the biggest one, and I have the biggest license. So, and I can see like who's the next biggest license around me, and then I could use those numbers and comp, etc. But in the city of Las Vegas, there's 13,000 running right now, and none of them have licenses. And now they're putting the license rules in, and they're only giving out 2,800 licenses out of the 13,000 that are operating. So what's happening now is there's going to be a huge shrink of short-term rentals. And I think, what I think is going to happen is the value of mine are going to go up because I have those licenses, and they're going to be super rare. But I would always recommend before when you dive into this business is look at the regulations. Are they involved? Is the city involved in making them legal versus not legal? Because you don't want to go do all this work and then have the city come shut you down because you didn't do research. So I'm dabbling in markets where there are no rules. Kansas City, there's not many rules at all. And the big one I bought in Arizona, Mesa, they don't have any rules either. So we'll see what happens as time goes on. But like having the rules better because you know what you're getting involved in.
Yeah, a lot of the markets that don't have the rules, what I've heard other people mention is they'll grandfather you in. But that's clearly not the case in Las Vegas, right? If they're only giving out a sixth of the licenses for the properties that are already existing right now, that is shocking to me. I've never heard something like that before.
Yeah, well, I think you just got to do them right. Like, I'm a licensed property manager, I'm a real estate professional, and you have people who do them kind of crappy, right? They just take a house, they throw it on, the house isn't functional the right way, it's not safe, and they just have these crazy parties, and it's not a right thing to do to the neighborhood. And so what Henderson does, which is I think a great idea, is it notifies your neighbors that there's a short-term rental coming in your neighborhood. And if there's any issues, there's a hotline that you can call and report the operator. And so if I get reported, I get a $500 fine every time somebody calls. So I got to make sure that everything is on point, making sure that my guests know the rules and letting them know, hey, you're in a nice neighborhood with neighbors around, so be super respectful.
All right, there's another quick take with the Real Estate Law Podcast. For the full episode, go to YouTube or Spotify or iTunes or wherever you heard or listened to that quick take. We also have all of our episodes posted at realestatelawpodcast.com. So on behalf of Rory Gill, I'm Jason Muth, one of your hosts, and we thank you for listening.